Good, thank you.
And John, you can take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors Commercial and Investment Division discussion today about the electrification of New York. We have a great panel today to talk about the issues that are going to be affecting the region and the state moving forward. Our meeting today is sponsored by Singer Energy Group, formerly known as Roberson Oil. And I'd like to welcome David Singer to speak.
Thank you.
He is our sponsor today. David?
Well, thank you for having us. I mean, this has been real exciting. I see we really got the right people on this panel. So whoever is attending today is going to know pretty thoroughly, at least know as much as all of us know about what there is to know about converting and electrifying buildings. I was at the end, I was hoping to go last so that I could kind of summarize and bring everything together from all the panelists. But I think if everybody just tries to pay attention and understand what's going on, the essence of what we're talking about here is really moving away from fossil fuels, and that's coming from the oil guy, and moving towards a greener, a more sustainable economy. In order to do that, you're going to really need to move to electrification of either your cars or your heat sources, because through electricity, we can create more centralized, cleaner systems for combustion at one central point, and then everybody else can have, green power at the different points. It creates all kinds of issues for the grid and things like that I'm sure Scott and others will talk about, but it's really a pleasure for us to introduce that to the group. We have been trying to lead this effort amongst, bringing the message to consumers is a lot different than bringing it to professionals like everybody here. And we are starting to move houses. We have some case studies we could share later of houses. We just did a very large residential apartment building, Scarborough Manor in Ossining, basically pulled out their old steam boilers and radiators and put electric heaters in each, like in a hotel type of unit you might see in every apartment. And they sub-metered, and the co-op's happier, the tenants are happier, and they're greener. So there's a lot of potential opportunity if you understand the systems and what needs to be done. I think the panel here today is the perfect panel to get you started. So with that, I'll turn it back over, John, and see, let these guys get started.
David, if you can hang on, we'll let you wrap it up as well with some closing thoughts. Okay.
John,
Thank you.
I just wanted
I also wanted to say congratulations to Robeson, today known as Singer Energy Group, on your 100th anniversary. And I want to make it clear to everybody in the audience, David was not an original employee.
Exactly. I wanted to make sure somebody mentioned that. Thank you.
John, I just wanted to add, it's still Robeson. It's still Robeson. It's always been Singer Energy.
Okay. Very good. So we've got three panelists today. I would like to introduce them and then let them do a brief bio of what they do and what their role is in their organization. And for some of our panelists, it might be informative if you tell them what your organization actually does. So we'll go around. Scott Smith is Program Manager, Clean Heating and Cooling at NYSERDA. Scott, want to say a few words?
Sure, John, thanks. So the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority that I work for is a public benefit corporation. We're a state authority like the Thruway Authority. And our role is to help set and implement energy and environmental policy in New York State. As John mentioned, I'm on the Clean Heating and Cooling team. We were created about 5 years ago, and our role is to help accelerate the decarbonization of heating and cooling, the cleaning of heating and cooling in buildings, which basically means electrification. We're going to get into that in more detail. Really appreciate, I'm a chemical engineer by background and know David pretty well, and appreciate the invitation to speak to you all today. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Next, we have Rachel Carpatella, Director of Commercial Clean Heating and Cooling at Sustainable Westchester.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to speak with all of you today, and wonderful to have Robeson sponsoring this. I work with Sustainable Westchester. I direct the commercial clean heating and cooling program, which is supported by NYSERDA. So I work really closely with Scott and his team. And Sustainable Westchester is a local nonprofit. We're a consortium of member municipalities, and we design programs that aggregate the power of municipal residents and businesses to implement clean energy and energy efficiency. Previous to this, I did work with the Green Business Partnership. So I've been working with businesses and commercial properties and enjoying relationships with groups like HGAR and the Business Council of Westchester and the Building and Realty Institute. And I look forward to continuing these relationships and working with all of you on electrifying your buildings. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. And last but certainly not least is Patrick O'Neill, PhD, president of mCloud. Patrick, you want to say a few words, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. As John mentioned, the president of mCloud's North America region. And what we do is remotely monitor and manage assets for our customers with the goal of optimizing their performance and improving the overall operational efficiency of our customers. And one of our big initiatives is the decarbonization of the oil and gas industry, which may seem like a bit of an oxymoron, but there's a lot of opportunity to make that industry as a whole much more efficient in many ways. We also have a strong offering for the commercial building sector, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So in the course of decarbonization and electrification, you also want to operate those assets as efficiently as possible. So that's sort of where we step in.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. We're going to begin our conversation right now, and we're going to go in order of the way the panelists just introduced themselves. For our members in the audience, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, please type them in there. We will moderate those questions. And at the end of the discussion, each panelist will take somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes to speak. At the end, we will address those questions. Okay, so I'm going to hand it off to Scott Smith from NYSERDA first. Scott, you have the floor.
Thanks, John. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do, I'll start off by giving everybody a little bit of a policy context for what electrification is, why we're doing it, and some of the initiatives that are going on in New York State. I'll talk a little bit about some programs, just give you a selection of programs that we thought would interest this audience. There's a ton going on, so we're not going to go through it all. And I'll turn it over to Rachel, who's the local expert who can help you. And she's going to talk a little bit more about some other offerings. So that's kind of how this all pieces together. And obviously, we'll turn it over to Patrick, who, as he said, is going to focus on asset management and commercial buildings. So what's the policy context? Well, a couple of years ago, the Climate Act was passed in New York, one of the most aggressive greenhouse gas reduction laws in the country. And that's sort of what's setting the entire thing in motion. And we actually there's a Climate Action Council co-chaired by the Department of Environmental Conservation and NYSERDA that is right now working on a plan for how we're going to achieve the goals that you see on the screen here. And there's a bunch of panels that have been established to inform that council. And we expect later this year for them to come out with that recommendation. And eventually it'll be up to the DEC to promulgate laws and regulations to set that plan in motion. But by the numbers, and basically, what we're talking about is, I'll get into this a little more in a second, but 100% zero carbon electricity by 2040 and an 85% reduction in carbon emissions below 1990 levels by 2050. Extremely aggressive. It's a major transformation of the economy. So one of the things that we had to do as soon as the law was passed was, well, how do we get there? Like that's one of the roles we have in state government is how do we do this stuff, right? So we hired a consultant to kind of look at, all right, what are the pathways to get us there? And one of the things I just point out is as we've been talking about, electrification is critical to any of these pathways to get there. We're going to have to see something around 50 to 70% of the heating systems in New York be heat pumps by 2030 and nearly 100% by 2050, and similar numbers of low emissions or electric vehicles. So this is the overall vision, right? So we've got to reduce loads. So we've got to do a lot more with energy efficiency, right? The kilowatt hours or the MMBTUs or the gas, oil, propane that we don't consume. Those are the highest value units of energy. Then we're gonna decarbonize, move to high efficiency electric space and hot water heating. And then we're going to decarbonize the electric grid both by on-site renewables, like people are putting in, solar panels or signing up for community solar, but then offshore wind storage, onshore wind, a lot of additional renewables being added to the grid, and some methods to sequester carbon so that we have a carbon neutral grid. So we've got a couple of things. So that's the overall policy context. We actually are helping the Climate Action Council and some of its panels do their work by putting together some roadmaps. So these are things to watch out for that will be coming out, be published later this year. One is a carbon neutral buildings roadmap, which is setting the long-term it's the long-term outlook, the 2050 outlook for how we end up with a carbon neutral building stock. And then, within that, one of the key elements of a carbon neutral building stock is electrification. And so we have a separate shorter term building electrification roadmap that'll be published alongside the carbon neutral building roadmap that's basically going to set the 10-year strategy from here to 2030 for where we need to be at the end of 2030 and how we get there. So where are we, right? So the technologies that we need to do this are generally commercially available. In new construction, we have some cost parity, right? We can do this in new construction with, no to little incremental cost. But our existing buildings, 70% or so of the buildings that'll be here in 2050 are already here. And those retrofits are the challenge, and that's a huge focus of ours. Super tall buildings are hard. Hot water needs in large multifamily, these are some of the challenges that we'll have to meet. And we have a research and development program that's going to be working on some of these things and others, including a need to transition to low global.
Bear with us. I think Scott has gone. I'm going to try to stop the screen sharing to see if that will help bring him back.
Gotta love Zoom.
So I believe he'll be back. Give us one moment, please, while we rectify the situation.
The break, go to commercial or
I
something.
have
Right?
sent him a quick text message. I'm sure he'll be back on momentarily. I'm looking at our slide deck to see if
I can bring that up if you'd like.
let's give him another 30 seconds and then, oh, I think he's joining us now.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? So I did lose internet. So if, Gary, you could put the slides up, I would appreciate it.
Certainly, one moment.
So where I was, and I apologize for the disturbance, everyone. Been having these small internet outages at my house a lot lately. So I just set the policy context and looking forward to answering some questions about that toward the end of the meeting. But what I wanted to do next was to talk through some of the initiatives that we've got going on. There's a lot. Most of our programming at NYSERDA has transitioned to, and even the utilities has transitioned to electrification over the last year or so. But I wanted to provide a snapshot of a couple of some of the things that we're doing for context before I turn it over to Rachel. So if you could go forward one more slide, Gary. Okay, yeah, this is interesting because I'm on my phone, which means I can't see the slides, but I know most of this stuff fairly well. So the utilities, there's a $700 million investment that the governor announced in the State of the State this year around electrification. About $450 million of it is an incentive program the utilities are running called New York State Clean Heat. Alongside that, we're investing $230 million in the activities that are shown on the screen. I'm not going to walk through all of them. There's a couple that I'm going to highlight on the next couple of slides, but I just wanted to put this up to give you a sense of, some of the places we're investing our money. $38 million in workforce development is the largest of the budgets, but we're also doing some marketing work and some other things that we won't really be touching on otherwise in this presentation. So Gary, next slide. And then one more, please. So I wanted to highlight a couple of things that relate to commercial buildings. This is the Empire Building Challenge. So it's a $50 million investment that we're making. It's basically targeted at large portfolio owners of large buildings. And what we're going to do is help them. This $50 million is going to be spent on helping them develop a plan to electrify a portion of their portfolio and then some funding to help implement it. And the idea is to set an example, not only within their portfolio so they can do it in other buildings, but also for other portfolio building owners. Next slide. So that was focused primarily on commercial real estate. We also have a Buildings of Excellence program that we've been running the last couple of years that's for multifamily new construction. And we recently announced round two, winners of round two, but it's a competition we run, once a year. And all, the buildings it's a low carbon building development challenge, and all the buildings are essentially 100% electrified and are, again, sort of setting the stage, showing the rest of the market how we can do this at very low incremental cost and high performance. Next slide. And then the last program that I wanted to highlight before I turn it over to Rachel is a community heat pump system program. So a lot of things we've talked about so far, and and a lot of the work that we're doing is converting, sort of one building at a time, or even in the case of the portfolio, it's a set of buildings, and that's going to get us part of the way to our goal. But we're pretty convinced that if we're going to achieve these deep conversions of this major transformation that we're looking at, that we're going to end up needing to have heat pump systems or electrification that serves a community, or think of a section of a downtown, or a college campus and its surrounding areas. And so we have launched a couple months ago. We launched the Community Heat Pump Systems program. We're investing at least $15 million over the next couple of years to evaluate those types of projects, to help design them, and then to build a few of them as demonstrations to show how it can be done. Okay, well, that concludes my slides. Hopefully I was decent on time, even with a little bit of interruption. And now I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Carpatella. I'm the Director of Commercial Clean Heating and Cooling with Sustainable Westchester. Next slide. Today, I will go through an overview of Sustainable Westchester, the benefits of clean heating and cooling solutions, market transformation strategies, key resources that we use for commercial green buildings, how real estate professionals have the power, lead the way, and my contact information. I'm a resource here to support you. Next slide. Next slide. Sustainable Westchester, as I mentioned, we're a local nonprofit, and we're a consortium of our member municipalities that includes the vast majority of the county and the county itself. And this allows us to aggregate the power of our municipal membership, of the buildings in the municipalities, to best serve them with clean energy resources, rebates, financing, and technical expertise. Next slide. Sustainable Westchester's programs include our community energy programs like Westchester Power and Community Solar. Our electrification solutions like Energy Smart Homes and the Clean Transportation Project, which has an electric vehicle charging station offering, which could be free depending on what your property, where your property is located and what kind of property you're working with. And it will also mention, obviously, that community solar is a big opportunity for commercial buildings. And then our zero waste programs, helping municipalities to increase their waste diversion with their residents. Next slide. The benefits of clean heating and cooling solutions, why we're all here today. So there's no burning of fossil fuels. This goes right back to what Scott was talking about from a policy perspective. But and that's so important, and I really want to get into how this impacts the use of buildings in Westchester, how it impacts the sale of buildings, and the ownership and management of buildings. Next bullet point, please. Should be able to click through. Great. So again, it is a non-pipeline solution, so that's to the policy. Next. It can reduce construction and other capital costs through finance, through different models of ownership of the heating and cooling systems. Typically, building owners and property developers have bought their heating and cooling systems and then maintain and operate them. But with clean heating and cooling, there's the opportunity for heat as a service, where there would be no upfront capital cost. Heating and cooling solutions reduce maintenance costs. Next. Save space in buildings. So without the need for chillers and rooftop equipment, you can utilize that space for community space. Or I lived in a geothermal building that had a basketball court in the top level instead of that kind of equipment. So it can increase the the value that you're able to get out of your square footage. Improve occupant comfort, no more using a double hung thermostat to get comfort, whether it's in a commercial property or residential. I hear that, multifamily, I hear about the improved occupant comfort and the energy savings and the cost savings that come along with that. Improve indoor air quality, more important than ever, and pursue green building certifications, making your property, a standout in the community and increasing its value and showing leadership. Next. Market transformation strategies. So this speaks to what my program, what we do. We aggregate the NYSERDA, Con Edison, NYPA, and federal resources. We also are in touch with NYSEG about the resources that are available. So we're bringing together the full array of resources so we can help you access all of them. And we organize events hosted by municipalities, trade organizations, professional groups, industry groups, and chambers of commerce. Much like the event today, we're glad to come and speak and bring a lineup of speakers to any group that you're a part of. Next. We facilitate webinars and small group meetings with key partners. So we have a series every other month we meet and we aim to have realtors, property managers, developers, architects, engineers, heat pump manufacturers, geothermal solution providers, VRF and air source heat pump solution providers, NYSERDA and Con Edison, all around a table so that we can discuss this market transformation that's happening in the heating and cooling space. And we talk about challenges and best practices, and we share resources. So if anyone would like an invitation to that, it is more of a closed meeting, but I'm happy to bring new folks in. The goal is just for us to build those relationships and to meet on an every other month basis. So please feel free to reach out if you have an interest in joining that round table. We consult one-on-one with people like you. I want to add value to your job. I want to make it easier for you to manage your buildings. I want to make it easier for you to sell your buildings, to own your buildings, and to have the building that you know that it can be. And we can also connect you with lots of resources to do that work. Next. We develop commercial case studies of heat pumps to showcase energy and cost savings. So if you have already done this in a building, you've already retrofitted with heat pumps, or if you have built a building, new construction, let us know and we will be glad to showcase the work that you've done and elevate it in the conversation. And we look forward to doing that. And we have a vast resource of case studies. So if you're thinking about your building and you're saying, but has it been done in a building like this before? For instance, maybe it's steam heating and it's not going to work in my building. Well, guess what? We do, we can connect you. We've developed podcasts, PDF case studies, and even some video case studies. So we're glad to share those resources with you and possibly make connections with those building owners as well, or facilities, the people who are managing and operating those buildings, so that you can hear firsthand what that experience was like and why they love it and would do it again in a heartbeat. And we produce the Conversations in Clean Energy podcast. So I welcome you to give a listen to that. It's available everywhere that podcast content is available. Next slide. And we're helping build back for a cleaner, more resilient, and healthier New York. Thanks. Okay, next slide. Here are some examples of key resources that we use to support commercial green building. So I don't want you to get too bogged down in these details because that's what I'm here for, is to help ferret out and get you to the best resource. And to make sure that once you get connected with that resource, that it's working really well for you. But we have an array of options. We can connect you with a free screening for clean heating and cooling. We can connect you if you have a smaller business or nonprofit. There's a free screening for clean heating and cooling for those buildings. There's a more in-depth flex tech study with clean heating and cooling. We can get you that for free, the 50% cost share, and then the other 50% coming back to you at the end of that. We are glad to introduce you to solution providers, to installers of clean heating and cooling technologies, geothermal, air source heat pumps, VRF, and as necessary, we can also facilitate conversations with NYSERDA and or the utility to best support your property retrofit or construction. Next slide, please. Real estate professionals lead the way. Leverage the value of clean energy retrofits. If you have a building that you're looking to, and so now I'm speaking to someone who's selling buildings, right? And you have an older building and it's not getting the attention maybe on the market. Maybe part of the way that you're presenting it could include it, once a new owner takes this building on, they have access to these, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of retrofitting programs and technical expertise and rebates. We can identify clients with buildings, new or existing, in need of heating and cooling systems. For example, schools, libraries, houses of worship, retail, corporate, multifamily, mixed use. We facilitate discussion between clients and our team. You can share your work with us so we can showcase accomplishments, and subscribe to and download the Conversations in Clean Energy podcast, and reach out to us for assistance. Next slide. And this is how you can reach out to me. My email, phone, you can call or text me, and I welcome you to visit our website. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. That was great. I guess, Patrick, is that John? Who's up next?
Patrick, you're up.
Yeah, I think I'm on deck here and ready to get in the batter's box, and I'll just share the right screen here.
And you're batting third, so you better get on
Yeah, right, a
base.
lot of pressure. Tough act to follow for sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, well, so we're going to shift gears a little bit to talk about what we're actually doing, commercially in some of these buildings. So that's, that'll be my piece. And the focus will be on one segment, which we call the SMB, or small to mid-size businesses. Make sure I can, okay, just a little bit more on mCloud. Really, the main thing that I wanted to point out is that we're monitoring a lot of assets globally. The buildings piece is the biggest part of our business right now. So we've got a lot of experience there, thousands of sites across North America where we're doing the types of things that I'll be talking about. Let's stop and take a minute to think about SMBs, and really what we have found, and I think what many of the previous speakers would agree, is the SMB market is really underserved. They're a little bit of a left behind market segment. There's a lot of attention that has been put on larger commercial spaces. There's just a lot more resources, both in terms of the internal expertise that companies have to manage and upgrade those facilities, but also the service providers focusing on them because they're large sales opportunities. And many times the SMBs get left behind, and there's where the opportunity is. The reason it's such a big opportunity is because it represents really, the vast majority of the buildings, depending on where you draw the line. Around 100,000 square feet and below as a SMB, that represents about 98% of the building stock in the country. So, a huge fraction of the existing buildings. There's about 6 million commercial buildings out there. So you can do the math that 98% of 6 million is a big number. Many of those have yet to, be fully outfitted for energy efficiency, smart grid communications, and that is the segment that we're focus and talk about today. In terms of the types of businesses that you would see there, auto dealers, retail stores, smaller healthcare facilities, it's pretty much everything that you see when you drive through a town, unless you're in downtown Manhattan. This is the building stock that needs the most attention. Some examples of the types of customers that we're into. You can probably recognize some of these brands. And I'll just point out a few, like Bank of America. You may think, well, they're not a SMB. Well, they have thousands of small facilities across the country that we service. Same thing with franchise restaurant chains, and so on. So huge opportunity across the country. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in these buildings. If you walk up to knock on the door of someone running a local health club, you'll find a relative lack of understanding in how their HVAC systems operate. everyone's now heard of indoor air quality, but they don't really understand what they can and should be doing. They certainly don't understand generally efficiency opportunities that may be available to them. So there is a lack of knowledge in what to do. They spend their days focused on, how do I operate my business? How do I stay in business right now? Usually when they do get involved in HVAC systems or lighting within their facility, it's a reactive driven by a reactive event. Something broke or doesn't work, versus, I really need to improve the efficiency of my facility. What we offer is really a turnkey approach to these customers, where we can go in and upgrade their facility and do it without any upfront capital. So we provide a service that, there was heating as a service mentioned by Rachel, I think. We do something very similar. We're a managed service that allows the customer to outsource the oversight of their equipment. We also upgrade and improve the efficiency. We also install equipment related to indoor air quality and improving indoor air quality. So we recognize now that it's not just about energy efficiency. It's about getting back to business and being compliant with the emerging codes and standards for indoor air quality. So the approach we've taken is what is the holistic operating strategy for this site. If you think about it, the most efficient way to operate the systems in a building is to shut it all off, right? It uses the least amount of energy when everything is turned off. Well, you'd have a few comfort complaints probably in that scenario, and it also wouldn't be very healthy. So the real approach, or the real need here, is to use just as much energy as you need to provide comfort and to provide a safe, healthy environment. So what our system, basically is comprised of is multiple layers, where we start, sort of at the bottom layer by instrumenting and upgrading some of the controls that are being used for the HVAC system. We'll look at, in many of these SMBs, there are packaged units that are usually not very efficient. So we've got various measures to install on those to drive somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50% improvement in the efficiency of a packaged HVAC unit. And then instrumentation for the HVAC equipment. We overlay upon that a indoor air quality sensing solution, because what we want to do, as I just mentioned, is operate that equipment, but in a way that is healthy for the occupants of the building. So we look at key IAQ indicators and make sure that we're keeping them within the operating parameters that make sense. Many of our customers also go a step further. You can dilute using outdoor air, but you can also purify using a variety of technologies. So we include that in the solution. And then on top of all that is a 24/7 monitoring, where we continuously review any alerts or alarms that come off the system. We will dispatch contractors if that's a requirement, but basically keep it running within the parameters that we've specified. We also, again, we're in a new world now, and it's not just about energy efficiency. So we have a sort of a adjacent solution or offering where we provide the customer with a trust badge that they can put in their front window that says, hey, we're monitoring and managing this facility to be as safe as possible. You can go up with your phone and look at the QR code and see what that site is doing to help promote indoor air quality. I mentioned already that we have 24/7 monitoring. So we don't just install equipment and walk away. We install the equipment, commission it, tune it, and then we watch it continuously to make sure that the energy efficiency is, where we expect it to be, the indoor air quality is where we expect it to be, and that we deal with as many of the operational issues that come up as possible without the customer even, getting in the loop. So they're not having to be reactive like they were. They can focus on their business. All of this then is done within the context of some awesome programs that are now in place. And Scott mentioned that we've got a number of programs from NYSERDA. The one that we work with is a real-time energy management program, which is a unique offering, really, I think, in the country, where NYSERDA will continue to provide incentives for this ongoing active oversight and management of the building. So they recognize that a lot of the efficiencies can quickly go away if you just install equipment and leave and disengage from the customer. So this promotes a strategy where you stay involved with the customer, you continue to collect data, you continue to monitor that site. And we're very excited to be one of just a couple partners who are a part of the building or the Con Ed Business Energy program, which is specifically focused on Westchester County and Staten Island. And they provide a very unique incentive to us as a program provider, where we get paid based on the energy savings that we deliver. So it's not a direct incentive to the customer, although some of that value does flow through to the customer in terms of reduced subscription. But it really is an innovative way to help promote projects, and it's just for small to mid-sized buildings. So it's not for large commercial. And we get paid a payout, annually from Con Ed based on how many kilowatt hours we save across our whole portfolio of buildings. So it's very exciting, and that program's just getting kicked off. So I will stop there.
Thank you very much, Patrick. We've got one general question from the audience, and that is, are all the panelists willing to share their slide presentation decks from today? If you would send it to Kathleen, who was your coordinator for setting up this meeting today, and then she will package the three of them together, and then we will send that out to all of the participants in the meeting today. David, before we get to any questions, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of slides I would throw on there, but I think it's really everything that you need to know has been covered. What my point here is, the people, the average real estate, my customer, the average real estate property owner, manager, as Patrick pointed out, has a full agenda of operating issues and really doesn't have the opportunity to do this all the time. I mean, I speak to Scott, Patrick, and now Rachel, regularly. This is what I do. And I gather this information, and this information is constantly changing. So I try to find people that are in the loop, firsthand knowledge, and that's how I stay informed. And therefore, that's how all the clients and hopefully all your members stay informed. So even though people always associate, Robeson is with oil, now, of course, we sell a lot of natural gas and electricity. Really, we're a resource. That's what we are. And bringing people like Patrick and Rachel and Scott, who really are experts and do this, all day long, every day, cuts through the chase a little bit and gets you closer to the goal, which for all of us is, staying on the cutting edge, having all the latest equipment, the state-of-the-art equipment. I mean, from just a purely selfish building owner perspective, it's better. It makes your asset more valuable. It makes your building more efficient. If you have operating systems that are state-of-the-art, people run their buildings on their iPhone now. I mean, Patrick's systems, people can do on their phone. So it's important to always be in the know, And that's why we sponsored this today. And I'm glad, John, that you invited us. It was really helpful. I hope people understand what's going on out there. This is just the beginning of really, I remember when my father was in this business, and he was in his 20s converting buildings from coal to oil, because that was the new invention. That was the new thing. Can you imagine if you're the super and all you have to do is let the oil driver pump the oil in? You don't have to shovel coal into the furnace all night long. That was huge. You were crazy not to convert. Well, we're back. We're back to that kind of event in the history of fuel and energy. And you could either be shoveling coal or you can be electrifying. And that's what this panel is about. And I hope people were inspired.
David, would you like to share your slides? I'm ready to do.
Well, if you want to throw them up there, it was just interesting to show that it is doable, and that's kind of where we come in. So this is Scarborough Manor. This is hundreds of units of a building that was a steam boiler. They went from oil to gas, and now they just did this, where they put these little units, these Dakin units that you see in the corner here that you would find in a hotel room, removed an old radiator system where everybody was having their windows open all during the day because one guy was cold at the end of the hall, so the whole hall got hot. So now every unit, every homeowner has this. The electricity supply was always sub-metered into the unit. So now you're paying your own electric bill, which helps Rachel. People want to conserve when they're paying their bill as opposed to when it was just the co-op board, So that's Scarborough Manor. So this could be done. The next slide is important to understand. I explain this to people all the time, that the biggest year in the air conditioning heating business was in 2005, when we had all that gigantic building going on and new development. Those units now are completely have to be replaced. They're 15 to 20 years old and they're done. So the idea, the opportunity is to replace them with heat pumps. So it's don't replace your AC unit until you've had an opportunity to look at what you can do, whether it's commercial or residential. Next one, simply put, this is happening. This is a house that was one of our oil customers, now is 100% electric heat pump. So it exists. It's not just these panelists talking about it. Next, this is what's involved. We're doing this for Patrick and his company, hopefully, and we do this now for our existing customers. But we go in, we gather the information of what you have and what you need. We do a little survey of your bills and what you're paying. We see if you're running efficiently. We bring it to some experts like Patrick to review. And then we determine what you need, and then we can install and implement. So it's a simple process, one-stop shop if the building qualifies. And then the last slide is the other alternative, which Rachel did talk about, which is important, is the green power that you can buy through the grid. We sell it at Robeson, but there's a number of other companies that are offering it. So you can, at least while you're burning a lot of electricity, you should be burning at least green power, and it's certified green, meaning that it's been covered by renewable energy credits. So it is truly a green product, but it's in the grid, so it's commingled. So it's not like, you're getting that. And I always say that, you do solar. A lot of our roofs can handle it, particularly with the existing air conditioning equipment up there. So this is as good as solar. If you're buying this green power from us or from anybody else, you're essentially, not releasing your carbon footprint has been radically reduced. So there are alternatives, and don't be shy about learning what they are.
Okay. We have a few questions from the audience, so we want to get everybody out of here by 11 o'clock. First question, Rachel, can you talk about any projects that are happening in the area that are excelling at sustainability?
Yes, we have a Buildings of Excellence Award winner in Yonkers, West Tab. I don't know the name of the property offhand, but they recently won, is that a $1 million award for their design, their building design. I guess that was, that was a new construction project. But speaking in terms of existing buildings, the Terrytown, there's a property in Terrytown that's a commercial building that retrofit with a VRF system. And I'll drop a link in the chat, a 36-minute podcast that you can listen to that showcases that, that energy efficiency upgrade.
Okay. Another question is, with the COVID crisis, all building owners, commercial property owners, probably haven't been collecting the majority of their rent for the last year or so. Is New York State providing any further incentives? So I know there were incentives pre-COVID, but with what's happening now, are there any additional tax incentives or programs that they're adding to facilitate the conversion or electrification in New York State?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. I mean, if you're specifically talking about electrification, the main program providing project funding is the utility-run New York State Clean Heat program, and that was, as you're pointing out, John, that was launched pre-COVID or right when the lockdown hit. April 1st was the transition from our programs to the utilities, and it's a 5-year program. And one of the important things for all of us in that program is that it's something you can rely on. It's stable. It's there for the next 5 years at a $450 million budget. There have been some of these things that we talked about: the Empire Building Challenge, the Buildings of Excellence, the community heat pump systems. Those are all new things that have come out since COVID. So there's the standard incentive program, which is sort of like, it's there for the next 5 years. And then there are these new sort of initiatives that have come out that we talked about.
Okay, Scott, the question directed to you: for the community heat pump program, how do you see overcoming property line restrictions? And I guess that's more of a residential question, so I leave it kind of open-ended to you.
Yeah, I don't think that the questioner was really referring to residential. It's not a residential specific question, right? So what we want to do eventually is connect an entire downtown area, all the small businesses, the residences, and that is going to be a major challenge. And we don't really know what the solutions are, but there are solutions. I mean, when you think about it, those challenges were overcome in developing our electric grid and our natural gas delivery infrastructure. So I would imagine a lot of the same solutions will apply here. And basically what we're talking about doing in a lot of these areas is running a pipe, along in the road alongside the natural gas pipelines that will deliver water instead of natural gas.
Good. This is a question from somebody who is a supplier. If someone is a materials provider for electrical equipment, how can they collaborate with any of you on the panel?
Yeah, I saw that in the Q&A, John, and I'm not sure I understand the question, but whoever's asking it can contact me. My contact information is going to be in the slide deck, and I can answer the question from my service perspective if I know a little more what the questioner is getting at.
I guess, is there a way to get on a vendor list maybe?
So from our perspective, for NYSERDA, not if you're like a component supplier. We have, the utilities have have participating contractors that do heat pumps. The component manufacturers or dealers or vendors typically wouldn't be on a list like that.
Say that for whatever product you're interested in selling, if you go to the website, they usually list how to be a vendor or the applications involved. It's pretty much there.
Okay. Any closing comments from anybody?
No,
All right, it looks like
I'm always looking to connect with new vendors too, so I would love to have a conversation with you.
Great. All right, well, I'd like to thank all our panelists and our sponsor. Great program. And I think you answered a lot of questions and actually raised some good questions for people going forward as well.
Great.
Thank you all
I'm
very
glad.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for letting us do it.
Take care.